Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of Product Talk. I am your host, Steph Rizzuto. I'm on the product management team here at Automox, and I am joined today by Katherine Chipdey. She is my partner in crime with AVR, amongst other things. Katherine, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so Steph, partner in crime. My name is Katherine. I've been at Automox for about 3.5 years now, so feels like 15 years in the old startup world, which is exciting. But it's been really fun, right? I head up solutions engineering now and alliances, so a lot of what Steph and I go through is the actual conversations we have with these prospects and customers, like what's their pain, what are they going through, and how can we ideally help in the best and most efficient way possible. So it's been a good time.
So, we're recording this on the day of the big Microsoft outage, and it feels like we should just say something about it. Like, in solidarity, this kind of crazy thing has happened, this
Yeah,
single point of failure that's happened that has just kind of crippled things globally, like
massive
flight
scale.
flights landed, hospital operations, just all kinds of things.
Hmm.
When it first broke, I was on Slack and I saw a bunch of team members talking about like, "Hey, what can we do?" Like, we could a blog post up that will help people. Is it something we could like put into a worklet? And I mean, unfortunately, this isn't anything that can be really solved programmatically. Like, these
Yeah.
companies are going to have to go and intervene manually on all the endpoints, which is just, I don't know, it's crazy. It's a scary day for, I think, the industry as a whole.
Yeah, it's definitely eye-opening, right? It's tough to say more about it besides, give yourselves some grace, look after each other. It's going to be a tough few hours or days for a lot of these companies. Any type of moral, physical support you can provide for each other, I think is the best way to go about this. And you can keep talking, right? A lot of what I've seen as far as some of the help with like BitLocker key recovery, which has been an extra layer of frustration for teams. Fixes and solutions are coming from IT and security managers talking to each other, forums, so we'll keep you all in the loop too, as Steph mentioned, and get through this one.
Yep, definitely. Okay, to our regularly scheduled program. Catherine and I are going to talk about how Automox is leading kind of the industry shift from reactive to proactive risk reduction.
Mhm.
It's something that like I hear Catherine talk about frequently and often, and
Well,
it's
shut up about
exciting.
it. Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's talk about it. Go ahead, Catherine. Jump right in.
I do love this topic. Anyone that's talks to me has probably heard about this, but I think it's interesting because like you don't often get a shift that big in a product vertical or in a space, right? Like we saw it with the firewalls and EDR tools, the whole cloud native autonomous zero trust shift, but that was like 10 years ago at this point, right? Maybe even longer. And so I think the fact that the remediation or action engine side of the house, now we know too well what's going wrong. How are we fixing that? The attention that side is getting is really exciting and specific to what you mentioned, Steph. Like that proactive risk reduction piece is one of my favorite ways that I see people utilizing Automox to implement, right? Because if you just take a step back and you look at that story, hey, the security detection, attack surface management, vulnerability prioritization, like all those tools have increased speed, alert volume, right? Like we know what's wrong. And so past few years, it's been, okay, well, now how do I fix that? And you're kind of taking that list of problems and you're trying to fix it. And, maybe you're trying to use better tools, maybe you're trying to use some automation to fix it. But like that big shift we saw when Automox came to the space as that first cloud native tool, with the automated policies was how do I set like a baseline of compliance that I feel comfortable with to
Right.
proactively reduce that, right? And so that's a pretty massive shift if you look at that versus people being like, I don't want to patch because I'm worried it's gonna, break my machines or something's gonna happen.
Reboot and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What do you think what do you see as one of, like, our biggest besides, obviously, our the automated patching piece,
Mhm.
but beyond that, what are some tools that you see that we offer that customers are using that are helping to, like, drive that shift and really kinda
Yeah.
change the landscape?
Yeah, I mean, I think from an Automox specific standpoint, like Worklets, obviously, which we've talked about a lot in our forums and to customers, Worklets, which is that configuration management piece, um, is incredibly powerful just because, to your point, right, everything that's not patchable is still a massive issue for customers. And all these tools they've typically had, like a group policy or, specific expensive config management tools. Um, are super inconsistent and very, very hard to implement and use. And so when you kind of take that aspect of, well, here's how we're proactively reducing risk with our patch policies and the SLAs we're putting in place. How can I also do that with certain security settings on my device, right?
Mm,
Like a great example being password complexity or account lockout settings or on my corporate devices I don't want people to be able to use their USB. So it's all these types of like configuration changes folks can do. And if you look at vulnerability scanners as well, and a lot of the main issues they're showing, like I always talk about flash, right? Because anytime a customer like they grunt and they're like, yeah, I can't get this thing out and it's giving me like 10,000 vulnerabilities just by having it in the environment. So it's not just patching, but like remove that and keep it out of my environment, right? That's
right,
kind of the important thing. So like that proactive risk reduction has allowed for I'm not just like remediating a ton of stuff and then it goes back up when patch Tuesday happens. And then, it goes back up if there's a 0 day or it goes back up if, somebody changes the config on their device. I'm keeping it at that baseline because I'm always keeping flash out of the environment. I have registries edited to where they need to be. I'm remediating 0 days with the click of a button because those fixes are created by this platform. Um, so I think worklets is a massive piece, and then what you and I work on a lot too, right? AVR, that automated vulnerability remediation, is kind of like that process shift between like even when we started here 3.5 years ago, the sentiment was IT security teams very different.
separate.
And I have always I've always been a little grumpy about that statement because like, okay, maybe, right? It tends to be that way historically. But I don't think it should be, right? And I think a lot of teams are in agreement of how do we start like proactively talking between those teams, how do we shift from that security team reactively passes a list of issues to IT? And how do we work together to set policies that make both lives easier, right?
Yeah.
Communication seamless.
How do we bridge the gap between IT
Yeah.
and security? That's definitely one of the aims when we set out to do ABR, one
Mhm.
of the key outcomes that we wanted to address. Here's what's wrong. Now fix it in an automated fashion, and be able to communicate that back to the security team that, this is what the steps that you've taken to do those kind of things.
Right. Because like when you interview those customers, what's the process that they typically told you they're doing today? It's kind of funny, right?
Yeah, it's super all over the place
Mm.
too. Super manual, and I feel like this helps them communicate better, and I don't wanna say get along better, but
But yeah,
kind
there's an
of,
aspect of it.
it, like, kind of helps them get along better. Maybe two segments that don't always, see eye to eye or get along super well, and now we have this tool in place that can kind of automate some of that, and the security
Yeah.
folks can see how much work the IT team is doing and how they're reducing the risk. So I think that's really important, a really powerful part of the integration that we have with Rapid7.
Yeah. Because think about it, right? It's like these teams and the way that this process was set up was like kind of a losing battle from the beginning, right? You've got
Mhm.
teams putting a ton of time and resources and effort into finding these, and then they're like, "Well, why is my risk not going down?" Right? Like this is a bad look. They
Yep.
don't feel like they're improving their security posture. But on the flip side of it, you've got these IT teams that have been given like maybe this is too aggressive to say, but like truly miserable tools to use to
Yep.
help do that, right?
Yep.
Um, it's just a losing battle as far as volume. It's physically impossible for humans to take care of that number of volume themselves. And so, they feel super overwhelmed, underappreciated as well. So it's not even really the team's issues. They've kind of just, it was set up that way.
Yeah. Inherently, the hamster on the wheel
Yeah.
type of feeling.
Yep. Boulder up the hill.
Another thing that we've kind of implemented semi-recently, I guess really it was like 9 or 10 months ago, is we introduced AskOtto into the worklet process, kind of our
Mhm.
first dive into, generative AI and trying to help users. I remember when we first launched it, I did like a series of interviews after with people who were kind of early adopters, and it was so interesting to see the feedback there. We had people who use AI all the time to never use it, but like consistently, what we heard is you're taking something that took me an hour before to do, and now it takes me, 10 minutes. I'm able to people who maybe weren't so strong in scripting, I'm able to,
Mhm.
like, automate these tasks. Oh, yeah. Same.
Yeah.
So I just feel like we're just consistently delivering things that are trying to go to this core problem, and like you said, the shift that we're having, and it's cool to be a part of that. It really is.
Yeah, 100%, right? It doesn't happen every year, right? Or with every
Mhm.
product by far. And so, this is especially a space that I feel like hasn't been given a lot of grace, right? As far as that remediation goes. And yeah, it makes sense. Like visibility comes first. You don't know what you don't know. But the onus is on executives and boards, and the CISO is becoming a lot more business oriented and finance oriented, right? Which is an
Yep.
interesting shift. And so to your point, like watching how folks adopt that, I mean, can you imagine like AI in patching and
Yeah.
configuration? Like we were still setting up servers to patch our servers, right? In that endless cycle. And the VPN dependency with this vertical in this, product segment. So, the point of being able to go plain text, hey, I need to do something,
Yeah.
having a script and being able to automate that across thousands of devices safely is pretty incredible.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Well, Catherine, you have any final thoughts that you wanna share with our Product Talk viewers?
Um, I think just going back to that premise of like really interesting ways the industry is shifting, that Automox is leading, and like how our customers are a big part of that, right? You're the adopters and you're the ones steering that ship. I would just say, like, keep communicating with us, right? Steph, to your point, you've talked to a ton of people, ton of customers. My team talks to everybody looking at making that shift. Like, I can't stress how open and excited everybody is to keep innovating, right? And I would hate to see such big changes and leaps being made and that like slow down at all. Like, let's keep going after that, right? Keep letting us know where your businesses are trying to go, where you're feeling pain, and let's do the thing together.
Yeah, I like it. Catherine,
Practice that.
bringing
Yeah.
the energy this morning.
What are you gonna do?
All right, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in, and I will see you next month.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thanks,
Thanks
Catherine.
for having me, Steph.
Bye.